Hark the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests.
Episode 115, Daisy and the Crescent's Edge. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Kurt Krenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining Scarlet 64's table in the Levitating Platter. And hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, the best unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast, in my humbly biased opinion. I've got an awesome guest for you this week, but before we get to my mystery contestant, I have to do the ad read from Plus One EXP. Of course, you know by now, Tony Vicinda is the mastermind behind this awesome brand. He's got all of the things that you'll need if you are in the market for some beard balms, lip balms, game design, and just fun community building. Tony has developed several different kinds of beard balms that you can apply. And if you can't yourself, then these make great gift ideas for those people in your life who do have beards. You know, just imagine it now, adding a +1 to your strength, your dexterity, or your charisma just by applying a beard balm. Of course, Beards and Beyond is the indie RPG that helped to foment and foster this idea of a brand in Tony's head. And through this, Tony has been able to collaborate and develop several other TTRPG products, including Repugnant, iToaster, Down We Go, Through the Void, Vamp Nebula, and Brandstaining, just to name a few. If you support Plus One EXP, either by buying something on their website or going to their itch page or the like, it all helps funnel into the Plus One Forward program, which seeks to support additional indie tabletop content creators. And by this point now, RPG Zine Club should be live, which is his new subscription service. So it allows you to stay in the know, have your finger on the pulse of what's new, happening, and hot in the indie TTRPG scene. And you can change your frequency of how often you'd like to receive zines and be able to engage with the community and give feedback, and also help indie tabletop content creators get their games into the hands of people sooner rather than having to go through a whole pledge funding, kickstart funding, what, you know, the words I'm trying to say. It gets games into your hands a lot faster, which is what we love. So I would highly encourage you to follow Tony and Plus One EXP on all of the socials, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and be sure to join the Discord server as well in order to keep up with all the various projects that are being worked on, as well as upcoming interviews, one-shots, some of their interesting programming, as well as actual plays of some of these amazing indie TTRPGs. So if you don't mind, when you go to the website, plus1exp.com, you see that affiliate code box and you're like, I don't know what code to put in, and I don't have honey, and I need something to put in that box. You should put in Randolph. RANDOLPH, like in episode number 2. And when you do that, you're going to get a discount on your purchase, and you're going to give just the tiniest and humblest of kickbacks to me, which I would certainly appreciate. So again, that website is plus1exp.com. And without further ado, hello, mystery contestant. Would you care to introduce yourself? Tell us who it is that you are and what is it that you do?
Hi, I am Scarlet64. I am a content creator, primarily a Twitch streamer with a focus on Dungeons and Dragons, but I have been bleeding into other TTRPGs, kind of broadening my horizons. I make TikTok content, I'm moving into YouTube, and pretty much I guess I'm a professional dungeon master.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is just basically DM one game and you're like, yep, professional. Got it. locked in.
I mean, it pays the bills. Is that not the definition?
I suppose, yeah, yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. How I first came across you is as I've been growing my podcast on platforms such as like Instagram and Threads. I started seeing you pop up in the reels and recommendations and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I pulled up Twitch one day, and then I saw you were recommended there. And then I just you saw me like pop in real quick, and you were like, hey, how's it going? I was like, oh, hey, I follow you on Instagram and I do this podcast. You were like, oh, cool. Tell me about it. And then I gave you like the quick elevator pitch and you were like, sold.
When I hear people find me on Instagram, it makes me so like happy because I almost gave up on that platform. I was moving into TikTok just because it's short form videos are so easy to make, and becoming a new mom has like limited the time that I have to make content. So TikTok really started like keeping me afloat from a content creator perspective, and people were encouraging me to post on Instagram too, and my Instagram at that point was kind of dead, but I was like, okay, fine, I'll start doing it. And so I just started double posting, and pretty soon Instagram kind of rekindled its love of me, I guess, because I started getting more follows and more traffic on that platform than I was even on TikTok. So now I'm pretty good at posting to both. I try to remember to post to YouTube Shorts, but I haven't put in the effort there yet, so I don't see much, and so it's hard to like be motivated to post over there. But well, that'll change eventually.
Well, see, I feel like my elder millennial is showing because it's like, yeah, shorts, that's something that I know exists. And you encouraged me to like really go forward with the YouTube thing because the Headliner app program that I use is really good at converting the podcast RSS feed into actual YouTube videos where it doesn't have any video. It just has like a little waveform that moves and it's
Oh, I actually was I the one that, because I didn't even know that was a thing. Are you sure that was me?
well, I think I may have just mentioned of like, oh, I think I'm going to start trying to do this. And you were like,
Oh, I was like, post it to YouTube. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I am also an elder millennial, but I only know about YouTube Shorts because it's my job to know about YouTube
sure.
Shorts.
I know it of it as well, coincidentally as well. But yeah, that's still something that like it took me this long until like
Yeah.
spring of 2023 to be like, maybe it's time for the podcast to be on Instagram because it's for the longest time I just didn't think that podcasts were a thing on Instagram because it's all about beautiful pictures of beautiful people doing like scantily clad
Exercises.
whatevers and workouts and you know thirst traps or whatever the kids say nowadays.
That's why I wasn't posting to Instagram, is because I just don't have the energy to be thirsty. But it turns out that there's actually a pretty big Reels community there. And I've grown pretty significantly. In fact, I think the majority of my new traffic to Twitch, which is where I make my money, is from Instagram,
Hmm.
even more so than TikTok, which I find very surprising. I have more followers on TikTok.
Hmm.
But just keep posting. Every new viewer is so valuable, and you are so welcome and awesome. We're so happy to have you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So that was certainly the encouragement that I needed for this evening. So thank you. Well, coincidentally, at the time of this recording, I just checked it earlier. We're 8 downloads away from hitting 9,400 total downloads for the podcast. So we're chugging along, you know, in our
Wow.
fourth season here. So I feel like you've already alluded to it beautifully. But do you currently, or have you ever played Dungeons and Dragons before?
Okay, this answer is going to kind of surprise you. I played my first game of D&D at the end of 2019.
Okay.
I was talking about I've known about D&D forever. My brother, when we were little kids, his best friend and his best friend's dads were like total D&D nerds. Never invited me to play with them cuz I'm a girl. And
Oh,
yeah, but I would sit and I would like kind of hear secondhand through my brother how it kind of worked. Like he would show me to the best of his. He was like 8, I was like 10. So I started like making maps and creating characters. I ended up coming up with my own like race class system based on my imagination, and then would rope my other siblings in to make characters with me. So I was always like on board. I just didn't have anyone to play with. until I was streaming one day on Twitch talking about how I never have played D&D, but I've always wanted to. And a handful of my viewers who were pretty regular to my channel were like, let's play. Let's just make a game and play. One of them was like, I'll be the dungeon master. And we set it up. We picked Sunday to play, and we have played D&D every single Sunday on my channel ever since.
Wow. That is a miracle to have a consistent D&D group. That's amazing.
So I was the only one that was consistent. I just kept swapping people out as needed because I was like, well, I can count on me. I'm streaming every Sunday anyway. So obviously I say every single, there's obviously been days that we've missed due to like real life instances.
Sure,
but
real life happens. Yeah.
that was always like the shtick. Like I went from being a player, the DM ended up not being very consistent. So I was like, I'll DM. So I learned how to DM after just like maybe 8 or 9 sessions of being a player. And I've been stuck as the DM ever since.
Well, there you go. Yeah. And so the name of this podcast is called Sidekicks and Side Quests. So we always like to ask the question of who happens to be your favorite NPC or sidekick character, whether they be from one of your games, another RPG, or if not, maybe a piece of literature, history, film, television, etc. And why is this character your favorite NPC or sidekick character?
I thought about this question pretty hard. I wanted to have a great answer, and I think I have one, but it was a hard one because when you think about when someone asks you, even like, what's your favorite game of all time? That's a hard question to answer because different games have been important to you at different points in your life. So I thought about it. I thought about which character I was cared about the most, the one I wanted to see succeed, the one that like really captivated me that wasn't a main character. And I have settled on the game Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess Midna. I don't know if you've played that game. Midna is...
I am a Zelda noob. I know nothing other than the music.
So Midna is like your Link's main sidekick. And she is this little imp that in the beginning of your relationship with her, she's very much a tease. She is kind of rude but playful, but you need her, so you have to tolerate her. And as you go through the game, you end up really caring about her, and she starts warming up to you. And there's even a moment when her life is in mortal danger and you think you're going to lose her, and a very like famous Zelda song. There's this one piano piece that plays on loop as you're like desperately carrying her to the only person who can save her life. I'll send you the link later. It's a beautiful song. It's called Midna's Lament. And you save her, and then you finish throughout the rest of the game. And it's an old game, but I won't spoil it. At the very end, there's this massive twist, and she ends up being so important and so amazing. And just, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It's beautiful. You care about her a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Other side of the equation now, what happens to be your favorite side quest? Whether it's from an RPG, whether it's from a video game, movie, film, television, B-plot, etc. And why does this side quest happen to be your favorite?
So I was not able to pinpoint one side quest, but I have to say the video game The Witcher 3 has a lot of side quests that are all fantastic. They all have a lot of depth. They all have a lot of importance. They have emotional, they all have a twist. They're very emotional. They really draw you in, and they really take great care in, they're not just like, oh, go collect 5 bugs and come back. They lead you down a story path. So while I couldn't identify a single quest, I would say in general, the side quests in The Witcher 3 are a fantastic example of how a side quest can be.
Final question we have here in the personal interview section. What are you passionate about and why?
Well, I can't say D&D because I think that's kind of the whole reason I'm here. I think I'm passionate about creation. I am an artist, a musician, and D&D and TTRPGs in general really kind of, they empower that. And so I think as long as I'm creating something that other people can enjoy and get emotion out of it, that makes me very, very happy.
Well, we've had the wonderful opportunity to learn more about Scarlett that I think it's time we head into NPC creation.
Yay!
All right. And NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our patrons from Patreon. So now is the time in the show where we give a shout out to our comfortable patrons and above with a loud hurrah. So to you, our queen of the Patreon, Katie Downey, aka Goblin Katie, as well as my compadres, Ansa Jablinski and Nicholas Cardarelli, and then my parents, we say cheers. So again, all these fine folks donate at least $2 or more a month. All of these fine folks belong to the wealthy level tier, which means they get to introduce an element of chance to our random tables that we use here in NPC creation. And you might get to hear some of their responses here today. And again, as I alluded to earlier, Katie Downey, Goblin Katie, she is the queen of our Patreon because she's of the aristocratic tier. And if you'd like to learn more about all these awesome rewards we have, I would invite you to check the show notes below, go to my podcast website, or just go directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests to learn more about our tiers of membership in the Patreon community. Help us expand our operations in the levitating platter in this demiplane and worlds beyond. Okay, so this segment of the show is where we get to make up an NPC. The idea being that this is going to be someone awesome that we're going to stick in our games, that other people are going to take and stick into their games. And so we begin the creation process by trying to determine, are we going to randomly generate a character? Do you have an idea you're bringing to the table? Are we doing a little bit of mix and match?
I think mix and match is a really fun idea. That way we can put our own personalities into the creation, but we can let the die decide some of the elements to kind of give us some prompts.
Okay. So, as far as the items or criteria that you've already got determined for this character, what is already kind of set in stone?
So, when I design NPCs, I typically design them as like quest givers. That's
Okay.
kind of like the role that they play in my games. They are the ones that kind of kick off the reason to go on an adventure. And because I'm usually like my big thing on social media is I am a total dragon nerd. I
Hmm.
think dragons are my favorite part of Dungeons and Dragons, and I have made so many dragon NPCs.
Hmm.
They just make such good quest givers because they've got power, they've got money, they've got ambitions, and they need minions. And canonically, they can exist across multiple worlds. They have this aspect of dragons in D&D is that they have echoes. So the soul or personality of a dragon can exist in Faerun, but also in the world of Dragonlance. It's technically the same dragon.
Hmm.
It's like a multiverse. Essentially, you can make a dragon NPC and
So it's like a variant situation with like Loki. It's like you have Thasradum in this realm, and then this is Thasradum variant in this other realm, and the variant in the other
yeah.
realm.
So it's like a reoccurring character that you can drop into any game and it doesn't break the contingency.
Interesting.
So I do this a lot with my games. I have a different various dragon NPCs that have established lore, but they appear in games that have nothing to do with each other.
So you've already kind of got the ancestry of our character today kind of locked in as far as like a dragon.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do it.
That's the only like guardrails we're working with, the bumpers and the bowling lane.
Yeah, because from there we can decide, is it a benevolent dragon? Is it a malevolent dragon? Is it neutral? Is it young? Is it like, yeah, there's so many choices. And I get to flex some of my D&D dragon knowledge.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. We love to nerd out on this podcast. So we begin our character creation process with a character name. And if you would like to roll a d20, that will start us off at the races.
Okay. 16.
16. Oh, wonderful.
Oh
So
no.
your name was provided by our previous guest and my niece, Lexi, Daisy.
Daisy? Okay, we can work with this.
Okay. And then the next question would be ancestry, but if you kind of need a little more time to percolate as far as what kind of dragon.
Well, here's the thing. dragons can polymorph. So the ancestry that we're rolling for could be their preferred mortal guise.
Oh, interesting. Good point. Yeah. So if you want to roll for that randomly, that would be a
Yeah.
D100.
Okay, I've got let me grab my percentiles. I've been playing Call of Cthulhu, so I have my percentile dice ready to go. Okay, here we go. 65.
65 as I scroll down the list. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so this is something that I've actually homebrewed, and this may be one of the few times that a homebrew thing of mine has come into play.
How exciting.
Yeah, so what this is, because there's Cambions that exist in the game, like a half fiend,
Mm-hmm.
half mortal. And so I was like, well, it has to make sense from a Manichaean power balancing perspective that there probably has to be some sort of equivalent half celestial. And so I've named those Aldatus, Aldatu. But essentially, I think of this as like a half celestial kind of creature.
Okay, so like even more celestial than an Aasimar, the way a Cambion is more fiendish than a tiefling.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I think so far that is going to push our dragon into one of the metallics, but it depends on other traits too, because it doesn't automatically go gold or silver. There could be, but I think we're going to go with a metallic dragon. If they're going to take the form of an Aldatu, that sounds like they're probably going to be pretty benevolent.
Okay. All right. I like that. And then let's see, the next thing we get to roll for is what is the job or role in society that Daisy's going to have in her guise form, I suppose. And this would just be a
Okay.
regular D10.
Okay. We've got 8.
8. Okay. Your answer was provided by previous guest Katie DeMatteis. Trust fund baby.
That makes so much sense. It's her horde was given to her from her progenitor. Okay. Trust. I'm writing this down on my cute little notebook.
And then the next thing we roll for is the age range of Daisy. And this is done by rolling a D8.
Okay. Where is my D8? There it is. 2.
2 would be teenager.
Okay, this is a young dragon.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Not a wormling, not an adult. Yeah. Daisy also sounds kind of like a young nickname, doesn't it? Like her
Yeah.
real name is Daziferatis Stoxalon, but she goes by Daisy.
Yeah, because it's easier for her minions to say.
Exactly. She's still trying to get some minions. She's young. She's inexperienced. Her lair isn't. She has a little bit of a lair, but her horde isn't quite established yet. She's got a couple more decades to go.
Yeah. And so then with these key pieces of information already determined, when we think of Daisy, we think of Aldatu disguise form with some kind of metallic dragon that's a teenager trust fund baby. What is the physical description that comes to mind? So we're painting a picture of this NPC. What are we going to see?
Okay. I think that we would take her metallic form. We haven't decided. Silver and gold are kind of like the most cliche, but if we think of her personality and depth, we could maybe branch off from that. But I think those elements could appear in her Aldatu form. I think when I think of Celestials, I think of them having those metallic, shiny. They're very shiny, right? So I think that she would look humanoid, possibly bigger than a typical humanoid human, but have like marbly skin with metallic runes carved into her arms, and her hair having a metallic sheen, but she's young, so it's like in a high ponytail, cheerleader-esque.
The image I just got in my mind, just because I'm thinking of my niece Lexi, who suggested this name. I remember years ago now, because she's obviously older, but years ago, her being obsessed with the Trolls movie. And I know there's that one shiny metallic troll that I just, for some reason, I just got a picture of that image, but obviously not like a cherubic baby sort of Aldatu, but a teenager one that's like I'm not like a troll doll. I'm like a real authoritative kind of person.
Oh, okay. She's a trust fund baby and she's a dragon. Dragons are very vain. They love money and they love showing their wealth. She dresses immaculately, way more than any teenager should. She looks
Mm,
like daddy pays for her stuff. And she's probably still in contact with her. Like most dragons do become pretty independent once they reach a specific age, but it seems like she's still under the wing of her parents,
hmm
who are kind of teaching her. She still has access to their horde. She
hmm
dresses really nicely, and even the benevolent dragons they're still vain. Like
hmm
it's still part of their thing. So yeah, she's got Gucci, she's
Okay.
got Versace.
Private school or like a boarding school
Yeah.
sort of vibe where it's like, oh, I have the uniform, but I have like the most exclusive version of the uniform.
I think she attends a boarding school, but she has her own flat in the city. So if she's like living in Waterdeep, she lives in the uppity part of town and has a private chauffeur take her to her schooling, where the
Mm,
finest wizards are her tutors. And I don't know if she would keep it a secret that she's a dragon or not. Metallic dragons don't have to keep it on the DL unless they want to, because people are pretty like they're like, oh, they're a nice dragon,
mhm.
they're nice. Now, if we made her like a silver dragon, she would be attending this school so she can learn how to better empathize with mortals, because silver dragons really, really, really like hanging out with mortals.
Yeah, party girl.
Yeah. Yeah, I think let's make her silver. So she has like silver hair, marbleized skin, almost like granite. Does your Aldatu have wings?
I guess it depends, like if it inherited more of the celestial traits or not, as opposed to the mortal traits. For example, I know like in a story that I made with one of my player characters, I think I said they came across an Aldatu character who had marble sort of colored skin because they worked in a place called the Marble Arches.
Oh, this is like so perfect.
Yeah, and I described her kind of sort of looking like a Deva, but not fully. That's kind of like at least the baseline that I got. But I'm kind of loving this idea of like the silver hair, the marble skin, and maybe some of the silver runes or markings or birthmark striations or something that happens in marble and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Maybe.
Maybe if she does have wings, maybe they look feathered, but they look like they're made of silver feathers, like almost like statuesque.
Okay.
Because she could be a little flashy. Maybe she hasn't learned to be discreet yet. Like she
Mm.
doesn't see why she has to pretend she's not what she is. She just takes a mortal form so she could fit inside the elevator better.
Hanging out with the popular clique and everyone's like gravitating to her to be her friend.
Yeah, but she is still going to be dragons at that age are trying to establish their own horde. Dragon magic is tied to their horde. It was actually talked about. It's from previous editions, but canonically in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons,
Hmm.
it specifies that a dragon's power is physically linked to their horde, and you can actually like de-level dragons by stealing their horde. In
Hmm.
previous editions, they would actually lose levels, but in this edition, they essentially, if their horde drops beneath a specific value, like
Hmm.
gold value, they no longer get access to their lair actions. So it actually weakens them. So dragons are intrinsically linked to their wealth. And every dragon, even the benevolent ones, want to amass a horde. So that
Interesting.
would be definitely a reason for her to employ adventurers.
Well, that just goes to show what a bad D&D player I am because I have the book and I haven't read that to know that maybe it wouldn't necessarily, personally for my home game, necessarily work, but I think that's a very interesting, fun idea and certainly enforces the idea of why people go on these seriously dangerous missions to steal from dragon hordes because it's like, well, we got to de-level the dragon if we want to have one day of saving the village from being perpetually plundered.
Here's the thing, while your players might think that's a nice idea, dragons are not stupid. And
Oh,
they
sure.
will usually set their hordes up in a way that it is totally unlikely that someone is going to make off with enough treasure to de-level their lair. Like they would be like, It's not coins. They don't have to have like, I think it was some weird, I don't remember off the top of my head. So let's just use the made up number of 20,000 gold just for the sake of this conversation.
Sure.
They would have the majority of that. They would have 50,000 gold in their lair, with 30,000 of it is the value of the pillars that are holding the ceiling up. Like, they know how to set this up in a way that it's virtually impossible to just take their lair away from them. It's possible, but it's very unlikely. It's more of the point of that in Fizzbanes is to emphasize dragons' innate need to build a horde and how precious they are about it. When you steal it, you're stealing their power, and they do not like that, and they will not suffer that. So I think the point wasn't to suggest you should go and try this technique in order to get rid of lair actions. It's like way more complicated than it needs to be. I think it was just to really hammer home the idea that dragons and their treasure are one.
Interesting. Although that did set up a very cool sort of, if you're looking for some sort of absurd sort of one shot or just mini series or something like that, of like, you have to ally the least likely allies. So you get, mind flayers, you get all these different groups who wouldn't normally team up. And it's like, okay, we need the Zorn to chew through the rocks. And then we need them to come up from underground and
The
start
ultimate
draining
heist.
the ultimate heist. Yeah. It's like an ancient dragon. And it's like, this ancient dragon is making life awful for everyone in this area. So we teamed up with the bad guys and the neutral guys and the good guys to pull off the ultimate heist.
Now, to remind you, taking their horde just removes your lair actions. That's still an ancient dragon.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that would, if you wanted to build like a one shot around that would be very fascinating. It'd be like Ocean's 11.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you were describing about like, oh, most of the values in the pillars. And so, yeah, I'm imagining all the intricacies, like with Brad Pitt and George Clooney are talking to each other. And then it's like, well, what do you mean? Isn't the gold there? And it's like, no, it's the pillars, you see. And it's like, and then that's why we have this guy sneak in through the portable hole on the roof and then start to undo the columns.
The 40-foot tall, 20-foot round columns. We got to remove them, and then
we open the arcane gate underneath the column, so then it just goes into the astral sea.
Yeah. All that to say, treasure is really important to a dragon, including Daisy. And she definitely would be hiring players to help her acquire important pieces for her collection. And dragons do have treasure preference. They all love coinage, obviously, but they often, their personalities dictate what types of treasure they like. And since Daisy takes the form of an Aldatu, I think she would have a particular interest in religious artifacts.
Ooh, okay, interesting. Yeah, and is that like a family thing, or is that like she's formed it on her own?
Well, so silver dragons are, again, benevolent. They're more likely to... Dragons don't typically worship gods. They're not from Toril. Although Bahamut and Tamara are platinum dragons that did achieve godhood, though dragons themselves are typically not the worshippers. But maybe she's interested in becoming a god herself. She's inspired by Bahamut and thinks that if she can acquire enough power, divine power, that she can, if she surrounds herself with religious artifacts, maybe people, kobolds at first, but then later other people will come around and start deifying her. So maybe her goal, her hope is to become a benevolent demigod or even like a lesser god.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. No, just I'm thinking of this. If she, she's a teenager and if she gets swayed by the wrong people, it's not a benevolent thing of like, oh, I'm learning about religion and all these artifacts and stuff like that because I really want to aspire to this thing in a positive way. Someone bends her ear the wrong way and with a teenager brain, and suddenly it's like prosperity gospel sort of nonsense.
I mean, she in her heart, she's like, if I get the power of a god, she's a teenager, right? Then I can help mortals more because then I could answer their prayers. They're so lucky to have me. But yeah, you're right. She would be very impressionable. Like, and a devil could potentially manipulate her, disguise themselves if they can outwit her, because she is only a teen. Yeah. Which in dragon years is like between the ages of 5 and 100 or something like that.
Right.
But still, in the grand scope of dragonhood.
The quarterback in the high school boarding school is like, hey, I think it'd be really cool if you did these like mean things. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. And yeah, don't buy
Or
into these bad ideas.
trick her into acquiring artifacts that are dangerous.
Yes, the Book of Vile Darkness.
But this actually makes her a potential NPC for good players and evil players too, because it could be the evil players are attempting to corrupt this dragon by helping her, air quotes, helping her, implanting ideas of grandeur and pushing her along. I don't know how corruptible D&D alignment is kind of interesting. Like the good dragons are good and the bad dragons are bad. I kind of like it to be a little bit more flexible than that. Like the
Hmm.
metallic dragons have personality traits, but they're still like unique. They're
Sure.
individuals, and you could have a jackass silver dragon.
Sure. Yeah. And a teen, so the teens are still learning, they're still not
Mm-hmm.
fully actualized adults in
Mm-hmm.
society. So as we're thinking on these ideas, I think it is always helpful for NPCs if we can kind of summarize them in 3 adjectives. So what 3 adjectives would you choose to describe Daisy?
I would choose glamorous, like GLAM. Uh, OUS. Yeah, she's definitely about the flossy flossy. So glamorous, ambitious, and what is the word to describe somebody who doesn't think that they could fall? Like cocky, like they think they're about, like they're incorruptible, but mistakenly. So they're
Right.
not bad, but they're like cocky's the wrong word.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not hubris.
It's not like she's not self-righteous, but she it's
Right.
like a teenager. You know how teenagers think they're invincible?
Right. They also think that they're infallible as well. So fallible,
Right.
I mean, in the regular form of fallible, meaning
Yeah.
that you fully have the ability to be wrong in things and not correct
Right.
on things.
Right. So when she gives quests to the adventurers, she'll speak with authority like she knows what's up, but you could have her accidentally give wrong information. Like she wants an artifact. She thinks it's better, it's used better in her horde, it's for the good of everything, but she's like missing so much context and
Mm.
information that she's a bit misguided.
Yeah, like this artifact is here for a specific reason because it's meant to plug this portal to one of the 9 realms of hell. And if you
Right.
remove it,
And
then
she doesn't have the
suddenly,
foresight to realize that because she didn't bother doing the research because she's a
mm,
teenager.
I'm sorry, I just had to text boys all night long and then listen to the bards.
She's got a bronze dragon on in her text messages.
Oh boy. And then mom and dad have to come down and be like, "Why are your grades failing? Why are you doing poorly in school?"
It's just a human wizard. It's not like he knows anything. I'm going to be so much smarter than him in like 200 years.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Look, I rolled. This is what the dice
This
decided.
is
I
what the
did
dice
not
decided.
decide
It's
this.
just getting a little too real. It's just
You
getting a little too
you
real.
told me it was a trust fund baby, okay?
Trust
This
fund
is not
baby.
my fault.
And listeners, if this is getting a little too real for you in your life, you can just leave us a comment on social media and just let us know how well the dice did this episode. So,
But what I really like about this concept is that the dungeon master now has the tools to have a straightforward, good dragon send you to get artifact, bring back, you get rewarded, cool. But if they want to add nuance, if they want to, more intense, she
mhm,
makes mistakes, there is a twist, she was wrong, or you're
mhm,
evil and you're trying to trick her, there's just a lot of options. You can make her be what you need her to be in your
mm.
campaign.
Okay. And now we get to go back to some dice rolling, which I know everyone likes to do in this section. So we always like our NPCs to have something cool on them. So what's going to be a valuable item, piece of lore, a secret, or an ideal or concept that Daisy would ascribe to? And this is a combination. So we're going to do a D4 for the category and then a D6 for the particular thingamabob.
Okay, before I roll, I just wanted to grace the audience with some dice ASMR. Are you
Okay.
ready? Are you ready?
Sure.
Is my microphone picking it up?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. All right, I'm gonna roll the d4. I got a 2.
Okay, so this is going to be a piece of lore, and now you get to roll a d6.
Another 2.
Another 2. Okay, interesting. So I think this will definitely feed into what we've already built up, but your answer was provided by previous guest Brian Rose. Daisy knows the location of a well-renowned weapon. So maybe perhaps like some kind of Holy Avenger-esque sort of a thing.
Yeah, that's like perfect because she'd be like, "Hey, I know where this Holy Avenger weapon is. Go get it for me." It would look
Exactly.
perfect next to my Chanel bag.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you want to like just vaguely say a weapon, or do you want to like actually describe what this weapon is? We could describe it.
Yeah, if you want.
Okay. Daisy knows the location of the holy moon scythe of the goddess Seluna, used by
Okay.
her warrior, a very famous warrior who met their unfortunate end due to a love triangle thing. And in her final resting place, her famed scythe was laid to rest, entombed for the last 2,000 years. And that's
Mm.
like so romantic. And I would love to have that in my bedroom. It'll bring me good luck when it comes to love.
So this is like the one obscure thing she picked up from one of her history classes, and she's like, this is the
Yeah.
thing that I need. Yeah.
Yeah, she heard about it. She heard about this like warrior of Seluna who fell in love with, I almost said like a dark justiciar of Shar, but I've been playing too much Baldur's Gate, so I'm not trying to like let that bleed into. Hey, but maybe, yeah, maybe there was a love affair between a follower of Seluna and a follower of Shar, and it led to the death of this warrior for unimportant reasons. And so when she was laid to rest, they laid her famous scythe bathed in the moonlight of the goddess. And it's silvery, and Daisy loves silveriness because she's a silver dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she'll like talk about this lore too. Maybe if you ask her about it, she like knows all the details. She like read about it and
Mm-hmm.
writes fanfic about it all the time.
I write epic poems about it in my spare
Yeah,
time.
she's written a song about it.
I had a
Its
bard play it
melody.
up in the, one of the fancy pubs in Waterdeep. It's all the rager.
Yeah, it suspiciously sounds like My Immortal from Evanescence, but we're not going to talk about
Oh my gosh, Daisy sounds like someone who would totally listen to Evanescence. Yep.
hmm I mean, yeah, to the younger viewers,
Back in our days, there was a band called Evanescence.
Amy Lee was so pretty. I wanted to be her.
Girls wanted to be her, men wanted to be her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is cool. Yeah. So get the holy scythe from the tomb. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would it be called? What's like the silvery side? No, that's so cheesy. Yeah, sure. The Holy Scythe. I was
The
gonna
holy
like come
scythe.
up with an amazing name for it. You know what I do as a DM when I need to come up with a name of something on the fly? Because
Mm-hmm.
I roll a die and then I use that die to determine which of my players, and then I put them on the spot and I just say, "Yo, what's its name?" And then I write, and that's its name. That's the name for the rest of the campaign.
Oh boy. Well, if you don't want to put that much pressure on your players on the spot, certainly, a dungeon master or a player character who's going to use this NPC Daisy and their backstory can maybe perhaps come up with a name. See, I was thinking of like Luna something, or, I would usually take the concept and maybe translate it in a different language and manipulate it a little bit in that way. So it has like some sort of tangible realness to it.
Ooh, what about like the Crescent Blade? Because it's a scythe and the crescent
Crescent blade,
moon.
yeah, because people are like,
Crescent
"Oh, crescent
Blade.
blade, that's gonna be like a cool axe or sword or something like
Or
that."
the
And they get there,
Crescent's Edge.
the crescent's edge. I like it, yeah, because people are gonna be like, "Oh, that sounds like a heavy metal hammer, maybe not a hammer, but a scythe or a sword or something like that." And if they get there and she hasn't told them, they're like, "A scythe? Like, really?
Do
This?"
Do you think it'd be like a two-handed scythe, like Grim Reaper, big, like, or do you think it would be like a hand scythe
Maybe
with
like a
a
hand
stroke?
scythe, because it's kind of like maybe kind of like Moon Knight in that way. Just like
Okay.
handheld and personal up close.
Yeah, and it would be like a magical weapon too. It would have like
Sure.
features like depending on like the waning or waxing of the moon, it has
Hmm.
different phases. Like when it's yeah, that would be neat. It has like different properties based on whether it's waxing, waning.
And does it do a Moon Knight or a Sailor Moon-esque sort of transformation when you possess the weapon and you're properly
Oh
attuned
my
to it?
gosh. So it starts at the new moon phase and then it's like the space between the blades starts to fill up with light, and
Hmm.
once it becomes a full moon, you use an action and it transforms your outfit into something super slinky, and then you just have moonbeams popping out of all your spaces, and for like a few rounds. You're Super Saiyan. This is a very legendary weapon, guys.
Sure,
This
of
is
course.
not
Yeah, of
for
course. This is
level.
why she needs you to go do it because it's been
Yeah,
like resting for 2,000 years in some sort of monster trap infested
yeah, like
tomb.
the dungeon of the Sailor Moon.
The Moon Sailor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where has this evolved?
Yep.
I love it.
Then
She
that's
is
what you
getting
can get
fan
with a
art.
few dice rolls. Yep. And
I
and
know.
the banter between two people.
I did not expect to be making a lunar celestial NPC when I thought dragon. When I thought dragon, I was like, okay, we're gonna get like a black dragon who's like really into the mud and the swamp and poison and. But here we are,
Yep.
Daisy.
Yep. And you may have already alluded to it earlier of what you're thinking that this particular quest is going to be. And if you want to stick with that, that's fine. We also have the ability to randomly generate a side quest if you want to roll the last dice, which is going to be a
Absolutely.
D12.
I'd like rolling dice, so we're gonna do that. Okay, I have my D12. That's a 6.
Okay, interesting. And you can tell me if you like this or not, but this response was provided by previous guest Legal Kimchi. Assassinate a government official and blame someone else for it.
Okay, hold on. We can work with this. We can work with this.
Oh, you do want to work with this.
Absolutely.
Oh boy.
Okay, repeat that. Assassinate a government official and then blame who on it?
Blame someone else for it. Frame the assassination on someone else.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the government official has to be corrupt.
Sure.
Is this a quest to get the weapon or is this something its own thing?
It could be its own thing, or if you want to make the two together,
Let's address it as its own thing, and if we can tie it in the end, we will.
sure.
Maybe she finds that she found out that her boarding school headmaster, who
Hmm.
is like on the board of education for the city of Waterdeep or wherever she's going to
Hmm.
school,
Sure.
Baldur's Gate, he is actually in league with some devils from the third layer of hell,
Hmm.
and he needs to go.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, she's a silver dragon, so naturally she's going to take it
Yeah.
upon herself to get this
Yeah.
done.
And she's going to have you pin it on another corrupt official who they famously butt heads.
Hmm.
They're like rivals with each other, but they're both like one deals with devils, the other one deals with maybe like Ginny or mind flares. Like they're against each other. So she could
Sure.
get you to assassinate one and pin it on the other. So he has to go to jail, clean up the city.
Interesting. Okay. The only way that I could think to tie them in, aside from knowing about the location of this well renowned weapon, would be like if they're hoarding or hiding information on the magic item.
I actually have an idea. The official who has made a deal with the devil
Hmm.
is unkillable, except if the blow is made with a weapon that is fits the description of the Crescent's edge. So you have to
Mm.
get the Crescent's edge in order to commit the assassination.
Interesting.
He's like immune to everything except for divine power that has slumbered for 1,000 years, and that's the only one she knows about.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So obviously being a headmaster of this boarding school and probably not trying to do anything to arouse suspicion. Yeah, it's like, why would anyone know that this guy can't be killed unless he's like doing really shady things, working in this secret society or whatever, trying to undermine Waterdeep or whatnot?
Yeah, I think you'd have to like get the information. Like first you'd have to discover that they're immortal. Like maybe you're given the information they're immortal, we don't know why. Do some reconnaissance to figure out what his weakness is, and then you can send them on a quest to discover the weakness, whether it's like eavesdropping on a conversation with him and his devil patron, or finding the documentation, like something you'd have to figure out. Or maybe you actually contact the devil and are able to like figure out how to get information, like what are the bounds of this contract. I can offer you something in exchange for information on the terms and service of your little thing. Yeah, it could be, oh, this sounds like a whole campaign. Holy crap. It's not a one shot anymore. It's a whole side quest.
Yeah, for sure. Assassinating it's a government official who's on the board for the
Board of Education.
Board of
That's
Education that oversees this boarding school that Daisy attends.
mhm.
Yeah, so with that in mind, what's going to be the reward for success in this side quest?
Ah. I mean, obviously she has a whole horde for you to choose from. But if you roll high enough on your persuasion, you can persuade her to lend you the Crescent's Edge, because you're going to die before she even hits adulthood. So she doesn't need it right now. You can just borrow
Hmm.
it.
Interesting. Yeah, and she has you like write up a contract or something like that.
Oh, she'll come get it from you when you
Well, she'll
die.
just come get it. Like, oh, you're on your deathbed of natural causes, and she's there. Like, yeah, I'm going to take this back now. Like, really?
Yeah, she just shows up and she's like, thanks.
It's like I'm in my dying moments here. Could you just afford a little bit of respect for me in my final moments, please?
Right. And even if like if you really you could just hand wave it and say she puts a spell on it that the moment you die it disappears and reappears back in her horde. I'm sure there's
Sure.
magic like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
She
could
puts a
lend
little like
you.
tracking thing on it. Yeah. So it's like
Yeah. So she could lend it to you. This wonderful magic item.
legendary magic item.
Yeah, Sailor Moon.
Or Moon Knight if I mean, you could be okay. I saw the cosplay where they did Sailor Moon Knight, which was pretty cool.
Is that when she's like in full plate?
I think it was someone at a Comic Con somewhere and they combined Sailor Moon with Moon Knight. And so it
Oh,
was a
that's
Sailor
so
Moon
cute.
outfit that looked like Moon Knight. So
That's
Sailor Moon
cute.
Knight. Yeah.
Perfect.
If you wanted to do that, or if you just want to go straight Sailor Moon, or if you just want to go straight Moon Knight, either or, you can't go wrong.
I would phrase it in the magic items description that when the whatever stipulations you put on pushing the phases of the moons, whether it's every turn it changes or every time you do damage with it, it changes. Once it hits full moon, you enter an avatar mode. The appearance of the avatar mode is up to the person wielding it, but there
Mhm.
is a transformation. They look more celestial, their clothing changes, and then they get access to certain actions for like a minute.
There you go.
And yeah, it'd be like a really fun like building up the power so that they can
Mhm.
unleash it.
Okay, so we know the reward, but we also have to consider what's going to be the consequence of refusing the call to the adventure or failure in the quest.
I would say the reason she wants to take out this member of the Board of Education is he is doing something shady in the school, like
Mm.
affecting the students. And that's how this whole thing starts. Like students are being transformed or being
Mm.
sacrificed
Oh,
or
yeah. Well,
being
I mean, if he made a
uh,
deal with the devil for invulnerability to pretty much everything, he probably has to like cough up a student. So there's a
yeah,
rise in student mortality. And it's like, oh, we're very sorry here at
students are
Waterdeep Boarding
being like
School.
sacrificed. So
Very horror
yeah.
movie esque. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you do nothing, then a bunch of students die.
Okay, so that's refusing, but then as far as failure is concerned, so is there a different set of circumstances if they, through the course of everything, somehow manage to fail assassinating, or they fail in their attempts at switching the blame on the other
Oh, that
corrupt person,
then they would be blamed, and then they would probably face the executioner's block
or just,
or go to
jail?
jail. I don't know how intense your game is.
Sure, yeah.
You killed somebody. I don't know if Waterdeep has the death penalty.
Yeah, I don't know. We might have to call Ed Greenwood and see if he wrote that into the lore or not.
Or maybe the devil that had owned the soul of the one you assassinated is like, there's a clause in my contract that if someone should terminate the original signer of the contract before the contract has been fulfilled, that the contract is now on you, and now you are bound to me, and I am your warlock patron.
Oh, so someone now inadvertently becomes a warlock?
Yeah, you just multi-classed into warlock, and now you have to fulfill this devil's will, else ye be turned into a lemure and put on the front line of the blood war in the nine hells.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Put a ticking clock on it, and then the players have to, if they want to go devil hunting, devil smiting, if you will, or anything like that, do a whole Diablo thing, and we're just gonna storm into the nine circles of hell, do the Descent in Avernus thing.
Yeah, now you gotta fight demons.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Wait, oh, so sorry. Mick Gordon is a favorite of mine.
What are the goals and motivations of Daisy as a character?
I think that's pretty self-explanatory. She is a dragon. She's a young dragon. Her goal would be to establish her horde and eventually establish a lair. That usually doesn't happen until they're an adult dragon, but they start building a horde early. And it'd be pretty straightforward, really. Just get a horde.
And you were imagining the swankiest of swanky pads in the downtown of
What's
Waterdeep.
so funny is a swanky pad in Waterdeep is still probably nothing compared to the potential of an adult or an ancient dragon when it comes to how fabulously wealthy they are. But yeah, she would have a pad in downtown. Pretty spacious windows that look over the city. Remember, she's a trust fund baby, so even though she hasn't established her horde fully, she's still living off of mommy and daddy's silver.
I'm just imagining like some of these accounts on Instagram where it's like, look at my luxurious apartment.
She absolutely has an Instagram account.
She has the D&D equivalent of an Instagram account. She does paid sponsorships.
Yeah, she's a socialite. I think she'd be pretty popular. Now, as a silver dragon, I feel like she would engage in a bit of philanthropy, but it's mommy and daddy's money, so she hasn't gotten her own wealth in order. She'll do like charity, but it's more about like convincing other people to donate. To certain causes, but she is still a silver dragon. Silver dragons are altruistic despite being fairly vain and still think they're better than everyone else. So I think she wants to be good. She wants to be seen, but again, she's young. So
she just hasn't gotten that life experience.
She's bedazzled by the adoration. So she makes appearances at soup kitchens and at like homeless shelters and orphanages.
Well, maybe she goes to the temples and stuff like that. She's so interested in religious artifacts and stuff like that. So she goes to Bahamut's temple. Being from the Catholic world, we try and be authentic and real, but sometimes there are those accounts that are like quote unquote rad trads.
She'd be too proud of her cleavage though to like be that trad. Like she's not dressed like a nun. She's like wearing a little mini skirt and like the white top with her nails done and like the glittery highlighter, and her hair has silver highlights. But she does donate. She does go to hang out. Again, dragons are not religious. Even though Bahamut is a dragon god, the lore is really wild. The dragons and the gods apparently fought a lot, and the world was split into two. And then it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Most dragons are not religious. They're too individual. They're too vain. They don't really worship gods. They know gods exist, but they would rather be worshipped as a god. That's what kobolds worship dragons a lot. But she would appreciate the art, that religion, and I think she aspires to be venerated, and that's why she does show up and do, philanthropy, because she wants to get the cred.
Now I'm just imagining these poor clerics and acolytes that are like, please, you need to, there's a dress code that we enforce here. You can't make it all about you. We are actually here, in fact, to have religious services. Can you please not make it all about you, please?
Personally, I see the religion in D&D as not being so much purity culture and all of that.
Sure, yeah.
Because I like to design cute outfits for my characters, even my religious ones.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe her definitely like ostentatiousness and trying to get like all the cred would be
Mhm.
distracting for sure.
But then again, you may have those, and maybe it's not Bahamut and she's visiting other temples and stuff. And so they're
Yeah,
like, look, we know it's Daisy. She's going to do it, maybe not necessarily for the right reasons, but she's bringing people into the
right.
service. They're helping out, I guess, in the
She
local
goes to the
communities.
Temple of Tamara. She goes to all the more, yeah, I think that she's on good terms with most of the upper plains gods
Yeah.
as far as a dragon is concerned. But she is young. She thinks she knows more than she knows.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's a teenager. She thinks she's
Sure.
invincible.
Yep. Okay.
And she thinks, I think another personality quirk, she believes with her whole heart that everybody loves her.
Yeah. So even those acolytes and nuns and brothers and friars and whatnot, may be like, no, this is too distracting. You're not getting the point of this. And then she's like, well, they're just great and all this stuff.
They all love me. I feel like they would be a little afraid to tell her anything because she is a dragon.
Sure, sure,
She has more hit points than they do. And she has a breath weapon.
sure.
So I don't know if they would say it to her face, but
They might take that
yeah.
into prayer or something like that. And they'll just be like,
Yeah.
this is something that I struggle with.
I think other dragons think she's obnoxious.
That's how much of a teenager. Okay.
Yeah, I think other because I don't think mortals understand dragonness. Like maybe wizards, the learned, the scholars, they understand how dragons work. Your
Mhm.
average person has no idea. A dragon is like dragon.
Yeah.
So
Especially if she's in this half celestial form, probably most people are going to be like startled and like, oh, there's an actual angel here. Like, maybe like
yeah,
afraid to approach her in the temples or whatever. Cause they're like, just give her a wide berth, let her have her space,
yeah.
don't disturb her, focus on what's going on.
Do you think maybe she goes from like church to church to give like little talks on how to stay positive and
Maybe.
she goes around, she gives motivational speeches in her Aldatu form. Maybe that's
Mm,
why she has an Aldatu form. It's for like the theatrics of it.
yeah. Yeah. Certainly people are more likely to pay attention to you if you're like this half celestial sort of creature that isn't
Yeah.
witnessed every day. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that people, when they don't know who she is really, they're like totally starstruck by her. But like an adventuring party around fifth or sixth level would be like, oh, it's like a half celestial, interesting. Oh, it's a young dragon, interesting. So they might not be as bedazzled, but they would be willing to like who doesn't want to work with a dragon?
And then how do these goals and motivations of Daisy affect her general personality?
How do her goals affect her personality? I think that while she tries to maintain a veneer of righteousness, she would probably be impatient with anyone wasting her time. She doesn't feel the need to convince anybody of anything because she's pretty confident. So, like, if players are trying to negotiate with her, or
Mhm.
okay, we all know those players who you present to them the NPC with a quest, and the players like to get snarky and like to try and talk circles around your NPCs, and you as the DM are like, "Would you just take the quest?" I think that if she were to be like, if people were trying to leverage additional pay or question her or try to walk circles around her, she would be impatient with that and just hand wave it and be like, "Okay, you're obviously not the group that I thought you were. Have a good day. Have an ice water on your way out." Like, she doesn't have time for whatever. She's willing to pay handsomely who will help her because she has that ability, and she will accept any of your compliments. But if you act like you're not impressed or if you try and like gain leverage, she won't like that. And she probably would just disengage.
And then how do you see her normally interacting with different kinds of people? Is she going to be the same across the board or does she have nuance depending on who exactly she's talking to, like friends and family versus peers versus her parents versus rivals if she has those at school and stuff like that?
I think think nuance is definitely the best way to go. With common people, she is going to try and look as fabulous as possible, but also come off as generous as possible because she's trying to build that like persona. With her peers, maybe she would just have kind of like a little bit of rivalry, like, oh, well, I volunteered at the orphanage this many hours. With her betters, I think it depends. With her parents, she's definitely like, mommy, daddy. She loves her parents.
I need more money for tuition. It's gotten really expensive.
I need more money. Well, they're paying for her tuition, but I need more money to go shopping. I want to go to the villa on the weekend. Like she
Mhm.
definitely is like that. It would take an entire podcast to flesh out her parents' personality. So we're not going to do that. We'll just assume they're there to give her what she needs. So she's very sweet, but in a icky kind of way with her parents. Let's see. Yeah, again with rivals, I don't think she's not malicious. She does think she's better than everyone. Maybe she pities people. Like what she just kind of if someone is just not getting along with her, she'll just kind of like flippantly be like, I feel so sorry for them.
Mm.
They're not in the light. They don't understand. So I think she frustrates others more than they frustrate her.
Yeah, it sounds like.
I wonder though, I think there's an important thing. I don't know who her hero would be.
Interesting.
I think everyone needs a hero, right?
Sure.
Everyone has somebody that they aspire to be like, and that might be tricky.
I know we said earlier maybe Bahamut if she was inspired
Maybe
by that.
maybe she is inspired by Bahamut. Like maybe she actually does feel a connection. Like I know I keep saying that dragons are not
He's my
religious.
great 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 grandfather.
I mean, well, isn't Bahamut the father of like all metallic dragons? I don't know my Bahamut lore very well.
I think so. There's like a Uber dragon, and then like Bahamut and Tiamat, and then maybe another one are supposed to be siblings.
You know what? Okay, your viewers are going to correct me on this. So, viewers, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong. I've only been playing D&D since 2019.
The secret is we make it all up as we go along anyway.
I love lore, though. I love getting the lore right. Okay, I'm pretty sure that Bahamut and Tiamat are the parents of all dragons, and their first child was Sia. It's a name I can't pronounce because I don't have it in front of me. Is the ruby dragon, the creator of the gem dragons, who is currently destroyed. So I think all dragons are literally from Bahamut and Tiamat. I think that Daisy would look up to Bahamut because he is celestial, he is divine. He has a realm in Mount Celestia. He walks among the mortals and, all this stuff. Maybe she's met him a few times.
Oh, there you go. Well, being a trust fund baby, he's shown up at like all the events, when she was growing up or whatever.
Or so the thing about Bahamut, I don't think he does that. He's like he hangs out with like common folk. A famous bit of lore about Bahamut is he often takes the form of a mortal, an unseeming mortal, whether it's an old man or a young, and he's always accompanied by 10 canaries, little birdies, who are gold dragons in disguise. A lot of people love that little bit of lore. So maybe she like bumped into him. She like obviously recognized him. And it was just really inspiring how he inspired the people around him. They all looked up to him, even though he was kind of humble. And she just, yeah. So maybe she does, even though she
Yeah.
has this haughty teenagery thing, she is all about Bahamut, thinks he's super dope, not in a worshiper god sort of dynamic, because again, dragon, but that's like her hero. Like
Mhm.
she is definitely influenced by him.
Although I like to imagine a party that works really hard with her and maybe not the more self-interested aspect, and maybe they do convince her like, you got to serve someone, and if you're not picking a god to serve, you're basically only going to serve yourself and, live a hollow sort of existence. So maybe actually turning to Bahamut as your lord and savior may not be a bad thing after all.
Yeah, actually, I love the idea that, and I like to do this with my NPCs, their end story is not written. The players affect the direction they go. So
Mhm.
that by keeping that open ended, that could be, you could make her more diligent in her following of Bahamut. Or you could just help her steal the Crescent's edge and murder her headmaster.
That too. Does Daisy have a particular accent or language she speaks with? Are there any idiosyncrasies in how she acts?
Hmm.
I mean, I know we're doing like affectations of like a typical teenager, but is that how we're imagining her talking?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess so. She's living in Waterdeep. The only character canonically that I know is from Waterdeep is Gale from Baldur's Gate 3, and he just has a very British accent.
Okay.
But she's also a dragon, so I wonder if using an exotic accent or a different accent
Hmm.
rather would help differentiate her. I'd have to think about that. I think she would. Hmm.
What's more exotic than the UK? It's like Siberian or like Cajun French or what, something like that.
Honestly, my advice when it comes to using accents and voices for DMs is use what you know. You don't have to use an accent if you don't know how to do accents, and be respectful if you do
Sure.
choose to use an accent. So I feel like that's really just up to the DM. I think though that beats you would like checks you would be would sound very posh
Hmm.
and sound rich.
Mm.
I think
Yep.
whatever, because that could translate to so many different things, right? It could
Sure.
be
Depending on which culture you associate with posh and rich.
exactly just, yeah. So you can just push on posh. I think that would be like the wisest way to tackle that.
What impact has Daisy made on the world? How has she shaped the local area?
Oh, so I think that she does tons of philanthropy. So she probably has made a small impact. She reads to orphans. She probably meets with wealthy individuals in the city to convince them to invest in different charities. Maybe
Hmm.
she works with charities, like she's an actual liaison with charities because she has so much charisma. Dragons have so much charisma.
Hmm.
So she goes on behalf of certain charities, like Orphans of Waterdeep or
Hmm.
education for orphans of Waterdeep. I don't know.
The
What
Widow's Fund or something
the
like
widow's
that.
yeah. So she works with them and goes to galas and events and convinces the patrons of the city to donate to different charitable causes. And she is given lots of lavish gifts for her work and effort.
Which adds to her hoard.
Exactly. Like she wants this for her hoard, right? Like
Hmm.
she gets product all the time. But that's like her pretty much most of what she does, I think, is not only does she attend a school of magic, but she goes to events that are charitable. Like nonprofits and charity are like her main thing. And that
Hmm.
might be actually where the players would meet her, would be at like
A
a
gala.
charity ball or a
Yeah.
gala. She's like there introducing people and meeting with people, and I think that eventually as she grows in her own wealth, she would then become a patron of different charities. Like, or maybe if she already has a wealth, the charities are coming to her and she's donating to these different charities. It depends on where she is in her journey.
Does Daisy have any current problems that prevent her from being a bigger player on the stage? Is it her age? Is it what she's doing with her schooling or is it something else?
I think, yeah, her age and just lack of resources. Mommy and daddy only pay for so much. She needs to make her mark as a dragon. She needs her own horde. She needs her own lair. And until she gets those things, she can only influence others. She can't do her thing.
Well, it sounds like we've learned a lot about Miss Daisy here that I think it's time we throw her into a random encounter. And this random encounter is brought to you by my partner, Zencastr. Now, if you had asked me, how do you even begin to start a podcast years ago when I first began with Blank Tape and then the very early portions of Sidekicks and Sidequests, I would have told you, man, I don't know. Me and my best friend just kind of had to figure it out together. And we found a podcasting platform we liked. And, it took us years to figure out how to learn the ins and outs of it to make it work for us the best that we could. And, we had to cobble a bunch of different tools and systems together in order to get a smooth quality and everything like that. And man, if I had known that Zencastr was a possibility years ago, I definitely would have jumped at the chance to just do the entire podcast and everything from ground up with Zencastr. It's so easy. It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. You log in using your browser and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, which is great if you're going to do the combination RSS feed as well as YouTube. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality possible, even if the connection is unstable, which I can guarantee myself, having come across this a couple of times. It's really great that the system is able to back up the recordings. So if you have a mild panic of like, oh no, my internet hiccuped on me a little bit, well, you can always go back in. You're like, oh, thank goodness that Zencastr was here to record them all. So it's an all-in-one service. If you have ever thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services like I did in my early days, those days are done. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SIDEKQ podcast and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So I hope that you out there in podcast land, you're going to be inspired now. You're going to take this chance. You're going to take this sign and you're going to go now and start your own podcast using Zencastr. And before you know it, you'll be a pro like me. So thank you so much to the sponsor. Be sure to go in the show notes in order to get all that information. And without further ado, back to the podcast. So the random encounter is a point in the show where we like to do a little bit of a role play, a vignette, a scene, a slice in the life of Daisy, the silver dragon, Aldatu, trust fund baby teen. I think I said all that right.
I think you got it right.
Yeah. So the question becomes, what kind of scene are you interested in showcasing her off in? Is this going to be her meeting one of the podcast NPC characters? Is it her having a flashback scene with her parents before she goes off to school? Is it like a day in the life of Daisy in class, or whatever kind of scene you're interested in, what you think would showcase Daisy the best?
Oh my, I think perhaps the meeting the players, potentially.
A podcast adventurer character, and then be able to give the side quest that way, you think?
Yeah, I think she would. Well, here, let's see. I think that it would be at said gala.
Okay.
She's socializing.
And then that's where she'll meet the character?
She'll approach the character and offer a quest.
And based on what we've learned, I mean, I'm happy to give you the entire selection of characters that have been made on this show, but I actually have a strong feeling of maybe who might actually be able to do the best with this. I'll go through the whole list and then I'll tell you who I think is the best. So, of the characters that have been made on this podcast, we have Duncan, the recklessly brave adventurer for hire, happy-go-lucky, no task too small, no feat too daring. We have Sonia, the warrior woman who multiclassed into a paladin who serves to redeem the undead. We have Korak, the lawful evil arcane trickster roguish dwarf. We have Chrisley, the herbalist, botanist, wood elf druid, who then multiclassed into a cleric to become a priestess of the living memory. We have Orion, who's the astral elf illusionist wizard. And then we have Agape, who is the lilac-colored tiefling wild magic sorcerer that's like Feywild inspired, who just multiclassed into a archfey warlock pact.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, who just multiclassed into an archfey. Holy crap.
Archfey pact of a warlock. And so those are I guess 7 characters that have been created on the podcast. Listeners, keen listeners, super duper awesome listeners, which I know is everyone, but if people remember our episode that we did with Moose who was the dressmaker of the Feywild, her reward was that she made you a special dress that could just transform magically into this cool ballroom thing. And since you were talking about like, oh, they should meet at the gala, I was like, well, Sonia has like an amazing dress that she made because she successfully helped out in that random encounter for that particular character. And so I thought maybe Sonia might be a good choice, but maybe one of the other characters speaks to you and you think it would be better if one of those other characters showed up.
Funnily enough, the one that caught my attention for this, the one that Daisy would hone in on,
Mm-hmm.
sounds like Duncan.
Oh,
As
really,
you
Duncan?
said, no task too small or too great.
Mm-hmm.
And our dear Daisy is looking for someone she can send on a very dangerous task. I don't know how Duncan arrived at this gala, but I think he would stick out like a sore thumb, which is why she would notice him as she's trying to like finesse an older couple over she's like standing by the hors d'oeuvres chit-chatting potential patrons to a charity that she's representing, kind of sloshing around her little martini glass.
Is she old enough to drink?
She's a dragon teenager, but she's probably like 57, 58. You know, she takes the form of a younger girl.
She had to get carded at the door. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
She's like, I'm a dragon. She's gonna be like holding her glass, talking, laughing loudly at their jokes. She's like, and then she'll kind of like glance to the side and make eye contact with Duncan. But what does she see?
Sure, yeah. So where we last left our hero Duncan, he was finishing up in the mines, in the underground, in the dungeon complex, because he met Rosewald Daybrace and Finn Wheatley and Aurelie, who were the goblin siblings who had opened up their little safe zone in the dungeons. And so after Duncan had completed that adventure, found himself back in, I think it was the Royal City nearby, we'll say is where this gala event is being held and where this prestigious magic academy is and such. Yeah, Duncan found, because of his success on his recent adventures, was politely given this invitation to attend, very hastily get some nice clothes put together. So he definitely looks out of place because the one thing that gives him away is the loafers. He's wearing deerskin loafers with these magic coins in the loafers. And for just some reason, he just can't quite find the will to actually take them off. So he's wearing like a very formal, like fitted, proper gala attire, but the shoes are what make him stick out like a sore thumb. And he's being polite and he's regaling people with these tales of adventures he's had and stuff like that. And he's just like, oh, I'm just so happy to be here. And well, this is really polite and nice that the city, that I got this invitation from so-and-so to be able to attend this event. And so then I guess he looks over and he sees this half celestial kind of staring him down, whether that is just purely being a teenager and doing her thing. Maybe he at first interprets it wrong as like, she's trying to be flirtatious with him and he doesn't know how to react to that or something. But I guess he'll just kind of like be like, hello, nice to make your acquaintance.
She would kind of saunter over and she would notice his loafers. She would have overheard his boasting of adventurous tales, and she would smell the dungeon still left in his scent as a dragon. She is very perceptive.
Mm-hmm.
And she would just kind of like grab one of the martini glasses off of someone walking by on the tray and hand it. Quite the adventurer you are.
Yes, I am. And he like very hastily reaches in a pocket of his and he pulls out one of his little business cards that he has and he presents it to her. And it's like, Duncan, adventure for hire. No task too small, no feat too daring. Basically, it notates that he is a patron of the arts of this particular stone cast that has come to some prominence in the local area.
Would she know about this?
Oh, about the Stonecast? Absolutely. Yeah. It's this endeavor of these two Hexblood sibling fantasy game designers who run like Magic Mouth podcasts. And so they plant these magic mouths like kind of all over the city, and the kids really love it. And they're exploring like game design, but then they're also doing like these thrilling actual play type adventures of several characters. That's part of their meta narrative as they're developing this game and stuff like that. And
Right.
so the kids love it. The
Right.
adults are kind of confused as to what it is, but the kids love it.
So she'll regard this business card and then look back at Duncan, kind of drinking him in. Tell me, what is the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
Oh, the most dangerous thing I've ever done. And he has to sit and think, so he starts going off on some of his adventures, talks about, well, there was the one time I had to go into the Feywild to go help Lily the Narwhalicorn find her mate. So, like, the
Extra
Feywild is no.
dimensional. I see. I
Uh,
see. She's gonna be like regarded, like commenting on everything.
I've
Excellent.
been to the Forgotten Realms, and I met Jarlaxle, and I met Talon Urin, and that's where I met Jack Splash, the Manticore. And so he starts going off on all these sorts of adventures, and I even met Professor Hank at the university. Yes, the poetry professor, who is definitely more than he appears to be, for sure. And you would know that Professor Hank of this university is actually a retired assassin who is actually a emerald dragon at the
Oh,
university. So yeah, you were definitely familiar with Professor Hank, whether or not it's the same university or not, maybe an adjoining university somewhere else.
I love me some Emerald Dragons. Ahem, ahem. Yeah, so she would kind of listen to this after he rattles off for a bit too long. She kind of will cut in. Yes,
Mhm.
are you available for the next, I don't know, month or so for work, of course, paid very, very well.
Oh, well, yes, of course. Yeah, no, I've only just got just back from my latest adventure, so yeah.
Excellent. Well, I happen to have a job for an adventurer who could take on a most mighty of tasks. It involves dungeon delving, intrigue, betrayal, romance, artifacts, and fabulous, fabulous wealth.
You see, like, his eyes would become like dinner plates. He's just like, "Whoa, this sounds too good to be true."
It is not too good to be true, I assure you.
Well, certainly, yes, I can. He's flabbergasted. He's just kind of like, well,
She'll pull out her own business card, which is like very fancy and shiny and perfect font and
he may be more impressed at the business card. He's just like, "Where did you get these made? Mine look like utter rubbish."
secrets. Now, if you would love to meet me at my office, I would love to indulge you in the details of this mission. It is of utmost importance. It is religiously significant. And I know of all of the adventurers in this gala, you were the one who stood out to me and caught my eye.
Duncan is just beaming with pride at this point. He's just like over the moon. He's over the moon with like the compliments that are being paid to him.
She would know that she's doing a good job here. She's very practiced at the
Hmm.
flattery. Excellent. I can expect you in the morning at my place. And if you were to ever take into question my character or my background, please ask any of these fine patrons. They will tell you all about the work I do for this city and the work that you will be participating in as a true hero.
And maybe as a formal custom and just being polite in this kind of society, whether or not whatever it may be. I'm thinking like the equivalent of like he goes to like thank her by like kissing her hand and asking her name, whatever that ends up translating into an actual game. But basically, he
Like,
wants to be polite and stuff like that, and like get her name, but he also wants to show her like respect and kind of
yeah,
stuff like that.
she'll kind of like musically giggle or whatever and be like, "You may call me Daisy."
Ah, Miss Daisy. Yes. A fine name for a fine woman. Yes.
And then as like people are kind of watching, because she is known in the circle, she'll kind of like put her arm around him and face him towards the crowd and just kind of like wave a little bit like a photo op kind of thing. Like, yes, yes, this is my new champion, everyone. They're like, oh.
Well, Duncan's even more like, wow, the fates, the gods blessed me today with where chaos led me, as it were, because he is kind of like this chaotic good adventurer, and he just kind of rolls with the
Perfect.
flow about like where the story takes him. So
See, this is why I picked Duncan. This is the perfect adventure to send into a death trap of a temple to acquire the Crescent's edge in order to assassinate my headmaster.
yeah, and so then we'll say that scene fades out with Duncan being swept up into the party and the gala, and he's just like elated to kind of have some R&R for a while, and then maybe a little groggily the next morning he'll wake up and make his way to Daisy's office to learn more about what's in store for him.
Her office is just her flat. She has a little kobold. Like, who are you here for? Name?
Perfect, and scene. So there we go.
Yeah.
We made it through the random encounter. So what did you
Yeah.
what did you think of getting to be Daisy?
Dude, I think she's gonna be in one of my future games.
I hope so. And then people can listen to this episode and find out her origin story.
That's right. The creation of characters is such a fun little journey.
Mm. So yeah, now we're here in the final thoughts section of the show. So we always like to check in with the guests and, how did you feel your time was spent on this podcast?
I feel it's been freaking amazing. Obviously, love creating. When you have someone else to bounce ideas back and forth off of, I think that you get like a better creation. Like, I feel like Daisy, how she ended up, is much better having got to brainstorm with you than if I just sat here by myself and started doing it. Because when you're with someone else, you get to ask each other questions and trigger a brainstorm. And
Mhm.
I'm just like really happy how this turned out, to the fact that like I want to make fan art of this character now.
I would love the fan art. I would love to share that all over the socials. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, this was a lot of fun. I didn't, just so the audience knows, I did not have this character in my mind before we started. We did start with one parameter, and I do think sometimes having a parameter at the beginning is helpful, because that way you can kind of like keep things like you're not too spread out. But with
Mhm.
that one parameter, Dragon NPC, Dragon Quest Giver, the dice rolls were able to create such a really interesting and nuanced character.
So here in the very final moments of final thoughts, I always like to leave the stage, the microphone, the soapbox, the platform, the what's a who's it's over to the guests. So where can people find you online? What are the projects you're working on? Where can we support you? And are there any passions or causes that we need to be made aware of?
Okay, you can find me at Scarlet64 across the board. I live stream my D&D and Pathfinder games on Twitch every Sunday. I do Out of the Abyss. It's been a 2-year long campaign that I've been the DM of. I also run one shots throughout the week. I make content on TikTok and Instagram and all of that. And right now, I am working on something called the Dessert Dragons. It's like a little art project that I'm doing. It'll be like stickers and stationery, and I'm making stat blocks and an adventure, and I don't know what it's chaos right now, but it went viral on TikTok, so I'm very excited to get it going.
Miss Scarlett, thank you so much for guesting on the podcast. Can't wait to have you back on to make even more NPCs.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had so much fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Overcast, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app of your choice. If you don't like using podcast apps and services, I'm proud to announce that I'm in the process of uploading the podcast to our very own dedicated YouTube channel, which you can find by searching for Sidekicks and Side Quests. All future episodes should automatically publish to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and the corresponding threads, Twitter, now rebranded X, and Reddit by searching for SideKQ Podcast. You can now also find a very tiny community on Discord as well. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. If you'd like to hail the bard, simply send me an email at sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you please leave a review on iTunes, 5 stars if you please, to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. As mentioned in the NPC creation section of the show, I do in fact have a Patreon for the podcast. If you love this podcast and you want to help support us and take our show to the next level, I would appreciate it if you would go to patreon.com/sidekicks and sidequests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Modest, comfortable, wealthy, and aristocratic accommodations await, and we welcome all patrons to the Levitating Platter. Seriously, your financial support allows for this passion project to continue to invest in itself through the tools that will take our production to the next level, as well as provide more content for our patrons and the community at large. Please consider supporting me on Patreon if you can.
Sidekicks and Sidequests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy, meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards. Portions of the materials used are property of Wizards of the Coast.
Copyright Wizards of the Coast, LLC.
Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.